Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. The White House says President Trump is frustrated with India's trade stance and believes a 25% tariff will help fix the situation. Economic advisor Kevin Hassett says India now may reconsider its practices. He confirmed more details on an additional penalty will be released soon by Trump and Trade Representative Greer. Despite rising tensions, Hassett remains optimistic. He says a trade deal with India would be a game changer for the global economy and hopes New Delhi will open up its markets to US goods. The comments come just days after Trump's tariff announcement sent shockwaves through bilateral trade circles. We're now joined by John Rossomando. He is the president of Viking Research Associates and geopolitical analyst. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. John, thank you very much. Always a pleasure talking to you here on the program. Donald Trump has obviously expressed frustration with India's trade stance, citing the 25% tariff as a solution. How effective do you believe this tariff will be in addressing U.S. concerns over India's trade practices?
Well, this is aimed at getting India to reduce its tariffs that have created a $45 billion trade deficit for the U.S. And President Trump's entire goal with these tariffs is to remove obstacles for the sale of American goods in foreign markets. I think it remains to be seen whether India will reduce its tariffs or will have some sort of deal come out of this.
Yes, indeed, John. Kevin Hassett, the director of the National Economic Council, has mentioned that India may reconsider its practices in light of the tariff. What specific trade practices is the US hoping India will revise in response to this?
Well, the United States is hoping that India will reduce the tariffs it places on American goods, so that we have, from an American perspective, a more level playing field. And that President Trump says he views Narendra Modi and India as a friend and as an ally, but he's using this as leverage.
Yes, indeed. And given the scope of this tariff, how do you think that India will react? Donald Trump did refer to India as still a friend, but then slammed its trade practices. Could we see major changes in India's trade policy, or might the country push back with a possible retaliatory tariff or even diplomatically?
Well, I think it remains to be seen, but I think that India is not going to take this lightly. I think that India, at least in the short term, will probably dig in its heels because it views President Trump's tariff policy as an insult.
Yeah, indeed. Hassett also remains optimistic about a potential trade deal with the United States and India. How realistic, after this situation, do you think that the two countries can come together and a trade deal is made, given the current tensions?
Well, I think that President Trump loves using chaos to get the other side in the deal-making process to make concessions. So, he did this as a businessman, and he's doing that in his trade efforts. So, I'm hopeful that the U.S. and India can reach an agreement.
The US government and the Indian government have two men at the center of their decision-making policy. Do you think this is going to put a permanent stain on that once close relationship?
Well, I think that at the end of the day, President Trump is hoping that his personal relationship with Narendra Modi will overcome any of the difficulties between the U.S. and India, and that we can end up with a trade deal that is equitable and fair for both parties.
Yes, indeed. And in light of this announcement, how do you anticipate the ramifications in the United States? Textiles, pharmaceuticals, information technology, these are all leading exports that India provide to the United States. How do you see these industries reacting to these tariffs?
Well, I think that there will be an initial shock. However, I think President Trump wants to see more of these products made at home here in the U.S. One of the things is the cost of production is so high in the U.S., which is why you've had offshoring over the past 40 some years to India and other locations. So President Trump is engaged in a kind of protectionism of American industries.
Yes, John Rossomando, please stay with us. We're joined by another guest here for this discussion, Sharad Kohli, who is an economist, and he joins us live from New Delhi. Sharad, thank you for joining us on the program. This announcement from Donald Trump on Truth Social came in an unprecedented time. Obviously, he's insulted India's trade practices while also calling India a friend. What do you think the ramifications of Donald Trump's 25% tariff on New Delhi is going to cause for Indian trade as a whole?
Well, I really don't think, Thomas, this is going to cause a storm here because, first of all, President Trump is known for making announcements and backtracking. He keeps talking of newer things the other day, afternoon, evening. He's also known for making new announcements on dates, for that matter. So I don't think these tariffs are sustainable, considering that India is exporting more than $85 billion of total merchandise, including the IT industry. The total bilateral trade between the two countries is $130 billion. So I really don't think America can afford to have more expensive pharmaceuticals, more expensive machinery, electrical and mechanical, more expensive leatherware, footwear. Either President Trump is able to set up factories overnight and start manufacturing all this stuff by itself. Otherwise, it cannot do that. And I think when President Trump said that we haven't been able to do a lot of business with India, that's not true. As I said, $130 billion is not a very small amount if it's not a very big amount as well. And the other thing is, putting conditions that because India is dealing with Russia, we are buying defense equipment from Russia, we are buying energy from Russia. I think each country has got sovereign right to buy whatever they want to from another country. If you are getting Russian oil, which is cheaper than the world market, if you're getting credit from Iran, we've got all the right in the world. No third country has got the right to interfere in what we deal with the second country. So that's my second take. And besides that, I also see a bit of contradiction here. Well, from January to July, to the best of my information, America by itself has imported about $2 billion worth of goods from Russia. This includes, for example, one of these items is a fertilizer, which probably America could not find anywhere else, so it imported. So this is a marriage of convenience. When it wants, it imports. When it wants, it calls the other countries, you are trying to promote murder in Ukraine and so forth. And NATO, to which US is a big ally, the largest ally of NATO. The NATO countries themselves have been buying from Russia ever since the war broke out in Ukraine. So I really don't think, Thomas, these tariffs are sustainable. He said at the end of his Truth Social message that he's trying to make America great again. But in the process, he's going to make America more expensive. America is already under a debt of $36 trillion, a $29 trillion economy being under debt of $36 trillion. It is going to cause a big economic mess in America. It's going to fuel inflation. So as I said, instead of making America great again, he'll make America expensive again. America barely came out of inflation. The growth rate is hardly 1 to 2%, which is pathetic. And, tonight, coincidentally, there is a meeting of the Fed where Fed is going to take decision on the rate cuts in America. And, he's never been very happy with Jerome Powell not cutting the rates for the simple reason, Mr. Powell is right, because the fear of inflation is looming large over US at this point, when inflation is on your head, you cannot afford to cut the rates. So tonight, I think the Fed is going to meet and a call will be taken on rate cuts. With these tariffs coming in, I don't think there is a room for rate cuts. I mean, if it is done, it will be done under political pressure. But I think Fed is an independent institution and should not be coming under political pressure. Any interference of the political establishment in the Fed is not correct. So, it can affect the dollar, it can affect dollar investments, it can affect American borrowings, it can affect overall condition of the economy. So I really don't think these tariffs are sustainable, Thomas. I'm sure that President Trump, after a rethink, after a rethought, or a second thought, he will have to take it back sooner than later, is what I feel.
Sharad, do you think there'll be a possible Indian retaliation to these tariffs? And also, what do you think of the relationship between Donald Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to be after this announcement? Obviously, the two were very close. Donald Trump reiterated that India is a great friend to the United States, however, then went on to impose this 25% tariff on it. How do you think that's going to play out?
Well, I think most part of the economics of America is ruled directly or indirectly by Indians. Indians not only have very prominent positions in the White House, but Indians also have very prominent positions in America, whether it is medical sector, business sector, or tech sector. So I really don't think President Trump can afford to spoil relations between India and America. As far as calling India a friend, every time he makes a bitter announcement about India, he makes sure that he quotes it with a sugar, that India is a great friend, but this is what I'm going to do. I really don't think, it is going to spoil India-America relationship. This is more of an arm-twisting tactic. And we should not forget, Thomas, that this is not the end of the world, making an announcement of 25%, because the FTA talks are still under progress. There is a meeting scheduled for last week of August, where something may come out and this will be taken back. So friendship of President Modi and President Trump remains. I will make a very bold statement on your channel that for the fact that India needs America, I think America needs India more than India needs America. India has got a very strategic geographical position in the globe. I think it is the second biggest Asian giant, and it has not got very good terms with China. I don't think President Trump can afford to spoil terms with India as well. Well, the deal with China and America is already in the limbo. I spoke to your channel earlier in the day that it is because of the structure of the economy, and I think every country has got a right to preserve the structure of its economy. How can we allow agriculture and dairy in India when half of our population is dependent on agriculture? I think President Trump will have to understand and respect the sovereignty and the structure of economy. I'm sure Prime Minister Modi, with his magnificent presence, he's got a larger than life presence. I'm sure he's going to prevail at the end of the day.
Yes, Dr. Sharad Kohli, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Pleasure having you on. Now we move east, where a massive 8.8 magnitude earthquake off Russia's far eastern coast had triggered tsunami warnings across the Pacific. The earthquake, which hit near Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula at about 11:25 a.m. local time on Wednesday, is believed to be one of the most powerful ever recorded. Around 2 million people were ordered to evacuate in Japan, Russia and Hawaii, but most warnings do discuss updates on this story. We're joined by Deep Sethi, who's located in Beverly Hills in Los Angeles, California. He owns the Bombay Palace restaurant in Los Angeles. And we're also joined by Professor Vibhuti Rai, who's the Dean of the Faculty of Science at Lucknow University. He joins us live from Lucknow, of course. I want to first move to Deep Sethi. Can you talk us through your day, Deep? Obviously, you are in one of these West Coast regions where the tsunami, the warnings were triggered. What can you tell us about your day on the West Coast?
So it's still morning here. It's about 8 o'clock, and I was surprised, actually. I didn't know about it until this morning. But checking onto it, the coastal towns have been asked no swimming, no surfing, and to stay on a higher altitude. And the bigger tsunami threat is near Santa Barbara in Humboldt County, which is much further away from Los Angeles. So, and to what I hear, it's been downgraded so far. So,
yes, indeed, Deep. But how has the mood in the area been? Obviously, you wouldn't have expected to be part of a tsunami warning. Throughout the day, obviously, the risk has been declared as less. However, overnight, did you hear anything? Did the government send out any messaging on the west coast of the United States?
So surprisingly, nothing. Usually you get an alert on your phones and so far nothing. But been walking in the morning and talking to people. Most of the people actually are unaware, and life is just going on just as normal.
Okay, Deep Sethi, thank you very, very much for taking the time and joining us on the programme. We're now joined by Professor Vibhuti Rai, who's the Dean of Faculty of Science in Lucknow University. Thank you very much for joining us once again.
Of course, thank you.
Of course, this 8.8 magnitude earthquake off of Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula is believed to be one of the most powerful recorded. Can you explain the science behind such massive seismic events and their potential global impact?
Oh yeah, it's basically the plate which constitute almost the entire Earth. We have this Pacific plate, the thin layer at the top of the Earth. It is colliding with the plate which is part of Russia, and it's locally called as Kamchatka plate. In between, the two are moving towards each other, and Pacific plate is down under thrusting the Russian side of the plate, and there we have the part of the entire Pacific ring of fire that we have, where we have earthquake prone areas along with many volcanic eruptions. So that's the region, and this is the epicenter of this 8.8 mag earthquake was almost the far eastern side of Russia. So this Kamchatka is actually the land area, and just at the margin of it, we have the subduction zone. And this subduction zone is locally known as the Kuril-Kamchatka subduction zone. And there we have this earthquake having its focus about 20.7 kilometers down deep within the ocean. So that's the reason it has a lot of impact on the ocean, which has triggered the tsunamis. And these tsunamis it's almost 16 hours since it has occurred. And since then, the early warning system across the Pacific, all the land areas and in the island areas, including the Japan and the coastal areas of all the Honshu, Hokkaido, all these islands, and also the Hawaiian Islands, they have had the first warning because they are the closest from where these seismic waves in the form of tsunamis have occurred. But as I understand, Japan has downgraded the level of the impact. But then these waves must be traveling all across, cutting through the areas of western side of Canada, and then western side of USA, then Chile. So I think it's still these seismic impacts have the tsunamis moving further ahead. Now, the tricky question is that after such a big earthquake of 8.8, this is one of the world's 8th biggest earthquakes ever. The last one was in 2011. That was in this Southeast Asia. That was 9.1. Wow. And then this Indonesia earthquake, the Banda Aceh and all those areas. And then 2010, the Chile earthquake of 8.8, the same mag. This Kamchatka area has a history of large earthquakes. Way back in 1952, there was an earthquake that took place about, I think in November, then in 1952, which was having magnitude of 9 on the Richter scale. So this entire region is pretty, this ring of fire has a probability of earthquakes and tsunamis and there's early warning system all across put forward, especially after this 2011 earthquake of Indonesia.
Yes.
So all across we have the early warning system, which provides within 5 minutes or 10 minutes of time to all the countries what has happened and how tsunamis are moving forward, and people should be evacuated. As I understood, about 2 million people have already been evacuated from Japan and other countries. So almost 26 countries are actually going to be affected. That's what the information we have.
Professor Rai, please stay with us. We have some more information for the viewers. The US National Tsunami Warning Centre, or the NTWC, which is a US agency responsible for issuing tsunami warnings, has cancelled the tsunami advisory for coastal areas of South Alaska, the Alaska Peninsula, and the Aleutian Islands, from Chignik Bay to Samalga Pass. The NTWC has now cancelled the tsunami advisory for American Samoa as well. We have some more news, but now moving down south. Authorities in Ecuador's Galapagos Islands have ordered the precautionary evacuation of people living in vulnerable coastal areas. A UNESCO World Heritage Site, the islands are located around 970 kilometers off South America's western coast. They consist of 13 major islands, 6 smaller islands, and dozens of islets and rocks. Officials have said that people living in the coastal areas should make their way to safe zones established by Ecuador's Emergency Management Agency. We're once again joined by Professor Rai. Professor Rai, obviously we're hearing mainly good news. The alerts are being lifted, put down. However, there is still caution in some areas. We've just heard the south of America are telling people who live in these coastal areas to still continue moving inland. Are these fears warranted in these regions? And how do these tsunamis work in where they hit? Obviously, it's a very, very far away from South America. So why is that region being affected the most now?
Well, it's quite simple. Whatever is close by would have the first impact, and that's why when the earthquake hit, the closest area had the early warning, and people, millions of people have been evacuated from there. And as the time would pass, these seismic waves in the form of tsunamis would move further down south towards the South Pole, and they might be reaching New Zealand and Australia, and of course Chile and Galapagos Island, as you have said. So these waves are, since it was a huge earthquake, so waves are actually moving still down in the southern Pacific region, and that's why I think the northern areas have been downgraded with the warning, because currently there is not much for them to be warned about, unless or until we have aftershocks, which may come in a day or two. So that's the only issue as if for now, because after such a huge earthquake, the seismicity fades out, and the chances are that things would calm down sooner in a day or two. But certainly, as these waves are moving down south in the southern part of the planet, they are going to hit the coastal areas. One more thing I would like to share with your viewers, that wherever the coastal areas have a very deep sea, the impact of these tsunamis are going to be more. And wherever there is shallow sea, the energy, the seismic energy in the form of tsunamis, they fade down. So that is one more thing where the coastal geomorphology plays a role, how much impact it's going to be.
Yes, indeed. We have some more news for our viewers, Professor. Dozens of residents in Gorontalo in northern Indonesia have taken shelter in temporary evacuation centres after tsunami alerts were issued across several Pacific nations following the earthquake. Let's listen in to what a person at the shelter had to say.
Ini warga-warga di sini memang panik, cuman mereka tetap waspada. Kalau misalkan ada yang terjadi, memang benar-benar terjadi sesuai info dari BMKG. Cuman mereka untuk menjaga-jaga terjadi, jadi mereka tetap waspada untuk menunggu. Iya,
Tetap banyak itu. Atau sebagian.
As we see there, Professor Rai, the worry is very much still there of aftershocks and tsunamis being caused. However, an earthquake of this magnitude, an 8.8 magnitude earthquake, it hit the Kamchatka Peninsula in eastern Russia. This has about a 320,000 population across a huge region. We haven't had so far any deaths, any injuries reported. That obviously has a possibility of changing. However, if this quake were to hit a more populated area, what would be the occurrence? What would happen?
Oh, it would be disastrous because it was a shallow earthquake at just about 20.7 kilometer depth, where the focus, the point from where the energy dissipates on all the sides. So in any highly populated area, this would have been very devastating. And I think it's very fortunate that this particular earthquake was in the corner of the world, as I can say it, where not much people were there. I just read in one of the newscasts that the mayor of the region has said that one kindergarten school had some broken walls. And that's amazing because an earthquake of this magnitude, having practically no impact whatsoever in the land area, is really, I think it was a narrow escape for people in the region. And I'm sure this early warning system for the coastal areas is a boon because it helps people to get evacuated, as you have just mentioned. This in the Southeast Asian region, people are taking shelter in the higher areas. I think this would be one of the few earthquakes ever to have taken place where we have yet to, for God's sake, to get a single person being found dead or been affected. That kind of news is yet to come. So it's a pretty good situation and a very safe earthquake, I would say, because this must have been a huge, I think, as I said, one of the 8th biggest ever on planet Earth. So it's very fortunate, I think, for everyone across the world and especially in the Pacific region.
Yes, indeed, Professor Rai. We have some more information from the South American region. Peru's disaster agency says that 65 ports along the country's coastline have now been closed. The announcement comes after authorities warned that waves could reach as high as 2.31 meters or 7.6 feet. Professor, finally, 2.31 meters, when it comes to a tsunami, that doesn't sound very tall or risk-enduring. Could you describe to us how a wave of that height can, in fact, be so damaging?
I think only some shipyards would be affected by this 2 or 3 meters of height of tsunami. And as it goes further from the epicenter, the impact becomes less and less. So I think it's almost 8 to 10,000 kilometers away from the epicenter, the area you're talking about. So the energy gets dissipated, and the seismic energy, and this only those areas where the ocean is deep near the coast, the impact is small. And as I earlier said, the shallow areas would not have much of the impact. So I think not much to worry as of now. And let's keep our fingers crossed for next 24 hours to see. In case we don't have any aftershocks, things would be settling down very well quite soon.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us, Professor Ryan, the programme. Thank you for your insight. We now move on. Given this earthquake that has occurred, you may wanting to know, how do earthquakes happen? Well, an earthquake happens when the ground suddenly shakes. This is caused by the rocks under the Earth's surface breaking or slipping. The Earth's outer layer is made of big pieces called tectonic plates. These plates are always slowly moving. However, sometimes they get stuck and pressure builds up. When they finally move, the energy is released as an earthquake. That sudden release of energy is what makes the ground shake. If you ever find yourself in an earthquake or tsunami situation, here's what one needs to do. During an earthquake, drop to the ground and take cover under a table or a sturdy object and hold on. Stay away from windows and don't use elevators. If you're outside, move to an open area away from buildings, trees, and also power lines. Now, if you're near the coast, be aware that a tsunami may follow. As soon as the shaking stops, move to higher ground immediately and stay away from the shores. Listen to emergency updates from local authorities and stay where it's safe until all clear is given from your local authority. Well, that's all that we have time for, but we will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world. Thank you.